Okay, if I could have your attention real quickly. This is an informal introduction. This is not the formal introduction. My name is Kurt Rome. I'm the director of the honors program of the Bumpers College. I want to welcome you all. It's great to have you here for our Food for Thought Forum. This is a student-driven event. This is brought to you by the honors board of the Bumpers College. The students have come up with this idea and are really involved. This is about you as students to ask questions. And the topic today is sustainable development and a new model using public-private partnerships. So when we get into the forum part, this is about you as students having the opportunity to ask questions. So we'll hope you have a chance to do that. We really want you to think about questions that you might have about policy, why we do things, how we do things, careers, opportunities in development. I'd like to introduce a member of Dr. Shah's staff, Alexis Kaufman, and she'd like to make a couple comments to you.
Thank you, Kurt. I don't have much to say because we want to turn it over to my boss, but we're just happy to be here. As some of you know, we were supposed to be here in April, and Senator Bozeman was a very admirable stand-in. So we're excited about this partnership with Bumpers and the Walton School. I just want to tell you guys a couple of things. We don't filter questions. We don't censor them. We're open to anything you want to ask. Obviously, Syria is a hot topic. I think after one or two of those, we might change topic. But we do want to focus on public-private partnerships. The only tip I can give you if you've never been in a town hall is this is not the time to seem smart or try to get a job with your question. It's time to get a really good, concise question that will give us time to all discuss and have some good food for thought. I promise I will not do the calling of the hogs in order to keep it a little calm in here. But back to Kurt, thank you.
Okay, a couple other things. If everybody kind of scoot over so we make sure we fill up all the seats because we know people are going to be arriving late. Now, we know a number of you have to go to class at 12:40. And so our moderator, Dr. Lanier Nally, is going to pause for a minute. If you need to get up and leave, you're welcome to go ahead and leave, although we'll continue questions till a little bit before 1 o'clock. If you do get up and leave, please try to leave as quietly and quickly as possible so we don't disrupt it, but we'll take a little bit of a break. Second thing is there's a pad of paper going around. Is this right, Dr. Boss? So those of you that are in Dr. Boss and Dr. Masadi, Dr. Moon, and my class, then you're supposed to be here. Look for a pad of paper, sign your name. That's your attendance that you're here. You should have a program. Everybody got a program so that you can take notes on it. That'll be good for you for other assignments you might have in your classes or to show your professors that you, in fact, were here. So, yeah, any question? Okay, so at the very end of the policy class, come over and find Dr. Wales to sign in. Again, welcome, and I think we're ready to get going.
Good morning. I am Mike Beta, Dean of the Bumpers College here at the U of A, and I am very pleased to welcome you to the second year in our Food for Thought series. This series was conceived and developed by honor students in the Bumpers College, and I'm very pleased to be partnering this year with Dean Eli Jones and the Walton College, who will be our co-hosts for the series this year. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Kurt Rome and Dr. Gary Ferrier, who have organized this program, and Dr. Lanier Nally, who will be our moderator for today. Special thanks to Trish Higginbottom and the special events team, and I'd like to recognize and thank Chancellor Gearhart for his support of our interdisciplinary efforts and our international efforts here on campus. You've been an inspiration in moving the university forward. Today's topic, partnering with the private sector for international stability and through global economic development, is one that transcends all disciplines here at the University of Arkansas. It is a key point both in promoting economic opportunities here in Arkansas and the nation, but also around the globe, and in so providing global security. It is for that reason that I am so happy to be introducing today's speaker, Dr. Raj Shah, who is a key member of President Obama's leadership team. He currently serves as Chief Administrator of the U.S. Agency of International Development. In that role, he was the key person managing and organizing the U.S.'s response to the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. He currently oversees more than 8,000 professionals who are stationed at more than 80 international missions hosted by the U.S. Dr. Shah previously was the USDA's Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics, and also served as Chief Scientist at the USDA. And previous to that, he was on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Global Development Program. He served in that capacity as the Director for Agriculture. Very pleased to have Dr. Shah on campus, and I hope you will join me in providing a hearty welcome to Dr. Raj Shah.
Good afternoon. How are you? A little hot out there. I don't know if you noticed. I want to thank Chancellor Gerhardt for having me here, and congratulations on your outstanding stewardship of this great university. Dean Veda for that kind introduction, and Dean Jones for your strong leadership of the school. Although he isn't here today, I'd like to take just a moment to recognize Senator John Boozman, who's been a real champion for the university, as you all know, but also a proud partner for me in helping to ensure that our work, both Senator Pryor and Senator Boozman, have worked to make sure that our work internationally is supported and garners real results on behalf of America's national security and foreign policy interests on a regular basis. So you have a special delegation at work here in Arkansas. I had a chance to travel, actually, with Senator Boozman to visit a program in Ethiopia recently called Project Mercy. Project Mercy is a local organization. Senator Jim Inhofe actually hosted us and took us on that trip. I think his daughter Molly is here today. And we had a chance there to see what some of our work together can really achieve. We met new midwives who had been trained. We met families that were receiving animals so they could manage livestock and earn income and feed their children diets with more protein. It was a memorable trip in part because our vehicle got stuck in the mud, which happens in these types of affairs, but also because when we arrived, finally, we were a little dirty, but we got to meet 1,700 kids whose lives have been fundamentally transformed. And transformed not by handing out food or even handing out textbooks, transformed by trusting their own instincts and their capabilities to empower themselves, to improve their core economic activity, and to use the fruits of that labor to move their entire community out of poverty. Those types of activities are what I'd like to talk to you about here today. Because I think at the end of the day, we all play a role, whether we're in the nonprofit space, in government, whether we're at big companies like Walmart, where I spent this morning, or whether some of you are going to be smaller scale entrepreneurs upon graduation, creating new ideas and new businesses that can transform the world. I'm especially grateful and inspired in that context by Maggie Jo Pruitt for your leadership and commitment. I know that you've not only served as an excellent liaison to my team and gave me great briefing materials about how wonderful the school is, but you've also been named one of 16 nationwide campus ambassadors for Agricultural Futures of America, and that's something for everyone here to take pride in, so congratulations. Now, nearly 100, you've all seen this plaque, I hope, or this inscription. As University of Arkansas students, you are part of a proud legacy of harnessing the power of science, technology, and innovation to fundamentally change our world. This inscription honors the 1862 Act of Congress that established land-grant universities in this country. Fayetteville, in what must be considered a very, very good investment, contributed $30,000 to have the university located right here in this town, and I'm sure the descendants of those that made that decision are pretty proud of themselves today. And for 150 years, as a great research institution, you've helped to bring science and technology both to agriculture and to community. And you've defined the community broadly. In fact, more than 60 years ago, the University of Arkansas sent researchers and students on a mission to Panama to help that nation improve its agriculture and its agricultural food production. This was the very first American land-grant institution to send a foreign mission abroad. And that's a real point of pride today. Over the course of several years, that team helped Panama improve its agriculture and farming, create methods for storing fragile seeds in humid climates, introduce new tools like replacing hand tilling with a plow. And decades later, we've used that basic model of American partnership based on science, technology, respect for local conditions, and an understanding of local partners to transform the face of hunger, poverty, growth, and opportunity in many, many, many parts of the world. So I am proud to be with you here today. Now, this is the Walmart distribution center not far from here. How many of you had a chance to visit here? Anyone? Oh, good. Some. Excellent. This morning, in fact, was a very special moment to visit the distribution center in Bentonville and sign a landmark new agreement with Mike Duke, the CEO of Walmart. Together, we were going to expand the USAID Walmart partnership to use the sourcing of food to help hundreds of thousands of people move out of poverty in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The distribution center, which is, as you can see, a massive and incredibly impressive array of bay doors and trucks and conveyor belts and computerized logistics, enables the company to reach 130 stores within a 200-mile radius of that building every single day. As we signed a new agreement to bring Walmart's capability, this is fast work for us because we just took that picture this morning, and we didn't even have time to look up, as you can see. As we signed this new agreement, we made a commitment to bring Walmart's core capabilities in philanthropy and in business to many parts of the world to transform the face of hunger and poverty. We're going to work together to improve sourcing on supply chains like cashews in West Africa and reach farmers that are small scale, usually women-headed households, help them improve their incomes and move out of poverty. Together, we're going to actually look at, USAID has 6 emergency distribution centers for our humanitarian relief efforts when a flood hits Pakistan and an earthquake hits Haiti. And we're going to rely on Walmart's ingenuity and knowledge of faster, cheaper, safer supply chains and logistics management to help improve the efficiency of that enterprise. And the reason these partnerships matter so much is because if we can work together and be more efficient, that means a medical laboratory that has to ship drugs or vaccines to a rural clinic in Haiti can do so more effectively, more efficiently, more children get served, and in the case of our work, fewer children under the age of 5 perish. Or in agriculture, if we can help make sure that perishable crops make it to market without being wasted or spoiled or lost in supply chains, even when the rains make roads seemingly impassable in places like Bangladesh, then we're helping to both improve rural incomes for farmers like the families we met near that Project Mercy site, and we're helping the children in those countries gain access to lower cost, higher quality foods that can transform their own condition of malnutrition. As the world has grown more interconnected, this is the new face of development. The days of hiring a contractor to build a road might still be relevant in some parts of Afghanistan, but in reality, over the long term, if we're going to end extreme poverty, unnecessary child death, and widespread child hunger, we're going to do it by bringing businesses with real supply chains, logistics capabilities, the capacity to invent new technologies, and the determination to measure results and work in partnership to some of the farthest corners of the globe. We've seen some success already. Some of our existing partnerships with Walmart and many others have helped tens of thousands of farmers move out of poverty in just the last few years. In Honduras, we're enabling more than 1,000 families to sell boxes of vegetables to Walmart by helping to support the quality of their production and ensure that their output meets basic phytosanitary conditions. In Guatemala, I've had the chance to actually visit communities. One in particular, where when I went with my boots on, ready to walk the fields and talk about agriculture, I met with a woman who had 2 young kids and sat down and said, well, tell me, what do you guys need from us? I'm the head of USAID, and I'm going to try to do my best to help you. And she said, I was thinking she might say, we need better seeds or farm implements or tools, maybe a tractor. What she said was, we need you to build schools. And the reason is, over the last 5 years, the USAID Walmart partnership had helped 600 families improve their production of potatoes and onions, sell it to a global, in this case, a regional supply chain of Walmart business. And those families were experiencing triple, quadruple the income that they were just a few years back. And the first thing they do, especially when women benefit from those increases in income, is they get their kids off the farm so they're no longer working. They send them to school, they buy uniforms, they buy textbooks, and they try to do what many of your parents, or those of you that are parents, are likely doing for your children, which is make the sacrifices to ensure that the next generation has a shot. It's a very fundamental concept, and it really does work and apply across the world. This is a photo of what we do in some of these communities. This was taken, I believe, in western Guatemala. And the way you can measure the level of malnutrition in these settings is by a series of measurements. In this case, this is arm circumference measurement, and by tracking age and weight and arm circumference, very, very basic things, you can find out if children are stunted or malnourished and begin to assess the level of challenge that exists in some of these communities. In 2008, President Obama started a program, 2009, sorry, started a program called Feed the Future. And through Feed the Future, we partner with businesses and universities, scientists, technologists, and local farmers to help them improve their production all over the world. We focus in 19 countries where the countries themselves have said, we're going to expand our investment in agriculture, we're going to change our regulations to allow businesses to thrive, and we're going to fight corruption in this sector, in this place. And when countries do that, we, the United States, will make significant investments. We've increased our level of investment in agricultural development from about $250 million a year to nearly $1.2 billion a year. The reason we've done that is because we measure and know that these efforts deliver real results. Today, through Feed the Future, we've reached 7 million farm households. We do household surveys, and we measure the nutritional status of children like the one you see in this photo. We've helped 12 million children move from a condition of malnutrition to nutritional self-sufficiency. And we're not doing it by handing out food, much like that University of Arkansas team did in Panama a long time ago. We're doing it by help people tap their own capacity to be self-sufficient. If we're going to expand this effort and reach hundreds of millions of people, remember that 860 million people will go to bed hungry tonight. If we're going to reach hundreds of millions of people, we need to expand the kinds of partnerships we launched this morning with Walmart. We had an opportunity recently to visit Africa with President Obama, and he had a chance to meet with some of the beneficiaries of our Feed the Future program. This woman's name is NIM Nuh, and she's a Senegalese farmer who now, she told the president her story. Her story was 5 or 6 years ago. She was a small-scale producer, not producing for commercial markets, consuming most of her output for her family. She has 6 children and at varying ages, and was taking care of all of them, many of them working on the farm. Today, she's using interesting mobile money-based cell phone technology to manage a group of a couple hundred female farmers in her area, pulling together their food production and output, checking by mobile phone local prices, negotiating with the middlemen to get the best price, and is part of a sourcing effort that has allowed her to increase her income tenfold. And in her community now, they're buying and deploying tractors, starting that positive cycle of technology, innovation, business success that so many entrepreneurs here in America have been famous for. And so when the president met with her and got to hear about her effort, it was very exciting to see that even in a time when some think Washington struggles to work, we can work in a bipartisan way across the public and private sector to really do transformational things. Now, this is a picture of the world at night. And I share this because what I've been talking about in food and agriculture is really a new model of development that is grounded in public-private partnership. Well, that same model is perhaps more necessary in energy generation and electricity access than in any other area of work. In fact, I understand you're having a record hot day today, and we're able to have this conversation because we take for granted the fact that we have access to reliable and low-cost energy. As you can see, the parts of the world at night that are simply not lit up, major population centers in Africa, certain parts of Asia, and even still certain parts of Latin America, represent one of the next big important development frontiers. In order to address this problem, especially for 600 million Africans who do not have consistent access to reliable energy, we've launched a new program called Power Africa. And Power Africa is designed to bring public and private partners together so that country governments make policy reforms, so that that often means deregulating their utilities and adjusting their pricing systems and cracking down on waste and leakage in their existing management of electricity grids. Private companies, ranging from GE to local investment houses, will come together to generate 10,000 megawatts of new energy, enough energy to reach 20 million people. And the United States government will provide a broad range of support for this effort, including some technical support from partners like USAID, but also loan guarantees and credit guarantees and export-import program benefits from our partner agencies like the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. This effort, which includes more than $7 billion of U.S. public finance and more than $14.7 billion of private investment, we believe can serve to transform so many of the economies, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, that frankly are growing at 6, 7, 8, 9% today, but are starting to hit a real wall, and some that already have because of how unreliable energy access is. It's easy to talk about energy access and think of large-scale power production facilities, and in fact, that's a big part of success. But there's also an important role to play. There's the president, I think, heading a soccer ball. And there's an important role to play for students. In this case, there are two graduate students from the United States, I think MIT, that created this ball called the socket ball. And it looks and feels just like a soccer ball. You kick it around for a little bit, about half an hour, and it has enough stored energy then to power your mobile device for 4 to 8 hours. And those are the kinds of new inventions and new technologies that frankly can be the next phase of university and student partnerships with the biggest development challenges we face around the world. In the background here, you see two gentlemen in blue ties, Jay Ireland of GE and Paul Hinks of Symbian Power. Most of the energy Power Africa produces will in fact come from companies like Symbian and General Electric. But often, and especially if we want to reach communities in rural areas that are not going to be on a modern energy grid for some time, this new technology frontier is an area where I believe students and faculty, graduate students and entrepreneurs can really apply themselves to do some transformational things in the coming year. This is my last slide, and it's just a photo of the president delivering the State of the Union address. But at this year's State of the Union, the president noted that it is possible to end extreme poverty in 2 decades. And it's easy to say something like that because lots of people say all kinds of things can be achieved. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. But the reality is, for the first time in human history, in these last 5 or 6 years, we've seen $1.25 a day poverty go down in every single continent on the planet. That had never happened before until about 2005. It paused for a little bit around the 2008 financial crisis. But that acceleration is happening today. And frankly, those of you in this room, especially those of you that are students, have the capacity to, in the next 15 to 20 years, actually contribute to the end of extreme poverty. And I want you to think about what that means for just a moment. That means that of the 7 million children under the age of 5 who will die this year, mostly from easily preventable causes, the great majority will survive. That means that of the 200 million children that are stunted, which means they are not achieving the right, technically the right brain development because of severe but hidden hunger and malnutrition. That means that can be reduced down to just a few million kids. And when you see these types of transformations, and it means hundreds of millions of people having energy access, when you see these kinds of transformations, it's not just moving people out of poverty, it is fundamentally changing the structure and demographics of these economies. We know as more children survive, parents have fewer kids, they invest more in sending those kids to school, and that has contributed to what economists call the demographic dividend in parts of Southeast Asia. We know that as more children survive, we see educational attainment succeed, and we see the level of wealth created go far higher than simply multiplying per capita income by the number of people in a society. And we know that with your support and your engagement, we can be successful in this enterprise and in this effort. I've had a chance over the last few years to visit dozens of college campuses and meet thousands of students. And the one thing I'm impressed with and amazed by everywhere I go is I think there's a deep, abiding desire across our college campuses, and I know right here in Arkansas, to get a great job, to do well, to apply your skills in a way that sustains your life. But there's also a deep quest to do that same task in a way that contributes to making our world safer, more secure, and ultimately more just. And you live at perhaps the only time in history when right out of the gate, whether you're at Walmart or General Mills, whether you're inventing a soccer ball or creating a solar-powered light suitcase that helps people, helps doctors provide services in areas where there's no energy, you have the ability to contribute to that future. And here's what success looks like. This is a photo of when we arrived in Tanzania on this presidential visit. For the 7 miles from when the plane landed at the airport to visiting President Kikwete's palace, on both sides of the street, often way too close for their own personal safety to the motorcade, lined up shoulder to shoulder, 8 to 40 people deep, were Tanzanian citizens who had come out to welcome an American president. That doesn't just happen because, for any leader. In fact, the Chinese president had been there 3 weeks earlier, and you wouldn't see that kind of outpouring. That happens because this country represents a core idea that all people have the ability to succeed and have certain inalienable rights. And when we lead around the world in a smart, focused, business-like way with that basic moral proposition, we in fact inspire everyone. So thank you. I look forward to your comments and your questions, and I hope you'll contribute to this mission as you pursue your amazing careers. Thanks very much.
We will take questions now from Dr. Shah, and how this will work is you will raise your hand, and we have two people with microphones in the audience, Maggie, Joe, and Will, and I will call on you, and they'll bring the microphone up to you. So Dr. Shah, I'm kind of a selfish guy, so I'll probably ask the first question.
Okay.
I've always wondered how at AID you make funding decisions, especially as it pertains to maybe smaller investments with really high probabilities of success, but maybe lower impacts versus hundreds of millions of dollars in investments of what Gates is known for and investing in changing rice from C3 to C4 photosynthesis with very low probability of success, but a huge impact if it hits. And maybe how the private industry could change those investments. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Well, USAID programs about $20 billion, a little bit more than that, every year to more than 80 countries around the world. But we rarely write checks just to a country. We'll usually invest in projects that can range from being large to small. When I started, the agency had been through a period that was tough. We had lost about 40% of our staff over a 15-year period. With the help of those in Congress, we were able to rebuild that staffing and in fact have expanded our workforce today to about 10,600 people around the world, which is really great that in this time we can make these kinds of investments. What that's allowed us to do is a few things that are different and important. Number one, we can find local leaders and invest in their entrepreneurial capabilities, whether they are Project Mercy in Ethiopia or Good African Coffee in Uganda or a small high leverage clean energy fund in India. We're able to use our resources to tap local ingenuity and expertise, which can often have a lower cost structure and improve the quality of partnership and results. The second thing we've been able to do is monitor, evaluate, and measure success more carefully. I can sit here and say we reach 7 million farmers because we do surveys and we track that outcome, and that data is all publicly available. Today you can go to the Apple iTunes store, App Store, and download apps that will show you both where all our projects are and an evaluation app that I think I'm one of the very few users of, but that has hundreds of program evaluations done independently by third parties, uploaded with no censorship whatsoever, so that we can all learn together and bring the best technical thinking to our work. And then finally, we've done our work with much more focus on science and technology, innovation, and partnership. And we could talk more about the C4 rice. That's a great project. But we're very large investors now in creating drought-tolerant maize for Africa, in creating improved crops that have more biofortification, more nutrient quality to them, in supporting efforts on the other end to use mobile phones to do something called parallel vote tabulation, which allows systems that allow us to track kind of on the same day whether the election results reported from a country track to our independent same-day parallel tabulation of likely outcomes, which helps us identify where there might be within a country areas of, if not corruption, at least a misappropriation of data and use of data. So all of these things are possible when we're well-resourced and run well, and we've been striving to do more of that.
Great. So questions from the audience? We'll start, Maggie, Joe, maybe right there.
How does the national debt affect your work?
That's a good question. It significantly affects our work. I mean, America's had this unique position in the world. Ever since World War II, we've been the global leader on humanitarian and development investment. Our efforts during the Green Revolution moved hundreds of millions of people off the brink of starvation in Asia and Latin America. Our efforts in health have saved millions and millions of children and led to the demographic shifts that I talked to you about in Southeast Asia in particular. And our efforts in supporting democracy and good governance helped to create a kind of 10-year path of strong civil societies and effective political processes in Eastern Europe. Maintaining that capacity to lead is very, very tough right now. We're in a position, as you all have heard, of sequestration. I don't know if you are familiar with that term. It's just a Washington term, but believe me, it affects everybody. And the worst part about these types of outcomes is you end up not making smart and thoughtful and well-managed reductions in some areas and expansions in other areas. You just take what are known as these blanket across-the-board cuts, where often the newest, most innovative, most efficient efforts, frankly, get the most significant reduction. So it's very challenging. We're very hopeful that Congress will pass a budget that moves us beyond this, but right now is a very difficult time.
Thank you. Questions on this side of the room? Yes, sir. Will, can we come over here for this young man?
What would you say is the greatest challenge to feed the future, and how is aid trying to overcome those challenges?
Well, thank you. I think the Feed the Future is fortunate to be, right now, working effectively, well managed, generating data that demonstrates where we're succeeding and where we're not and need to redouble efforts. And it also benefits right now from strong bipartisan support, which is very, very important. I think as I look forward, the 2 or 3 big challenges are, number one, we're about to enter a horizon with new crop technologies and new production technologies that can really transform some of the places where we work. And I think we need to make sure that the regulatory systems and the countries are open to appropriate technology that's well regulated, and so that farmers have the choice as to what seeds to use and what fertilizers to use and can pursue their own growth and development that way. I think second is we still see real barriers to trade within countries and within regional communities. And it's a little known fact, but most agricultural production is consumed in the country in which it was produced. And that's true everywhere around the world. And so we need to do more to make sure that countries are liberalizing and opening up their food economies and allowing kind of modern systems to take hold. And third, I always worry about the political positioning of things. We're a few really committed members of the House or Senate on either party can create tremendous opportunity, but that can go away quickly too. And our country, I did something like this with Condoleezza Rice recently, and we were talking about great successes in health, which I'm happy to describe to you. But those succeeded because we took a business-like long-term approach, and administrations and Congress supported those global health investments over 10, 12, 15 years. That's when you really start to see success. So being 3 years in and saying this is very successful is super exciting. Knowing that there's going to be strong political support 10 years from now is what it takes to end widespread child hunger as we know it.
Thank you. This side of the room. Maggie, Joe, can you?
Is desertification in the Sahel growing or under control as the result of tree planting and conservation efforts by NGOs?
That's a great question. I should ask that you all introduce yourself, by the way, because these are really good questions, and I'd like to understand a little bit. So can you just tell me your name and what you're studying?
My name is Jonathan Verhoeven, and I'm an independent analyst. I'm not a U of A student, actually.
Okay, great. Jonathan's referring to this effort that's gotten a lot of attention called regreening the Sahel. And the Sahel is, of course, a large part of Western Africa, cutting across maybe 17 countries. We've actually seen over the last few years a significant deterioration in food security related to climate. More drought, hotter growing conditions means less food available, and then that couples with the deep vulnerabilities of many of these communities and has led to almost 17 million people being at risk of severe food insecurity and acute hunger. One of the successes in tackling that challenge has been this effort of regreening, planting trees, establishing vegetation, doing it in a scientifically managed area where we use satellite data to track, where that regreening effort's more likely to be successful. And where that's taken hold over a 10-year period, it makes a big difference. But I would say, in general, we're going in the wrong direction, not the right direction, because of severe climate stress and poorly governed parts of countries. We're now able to do, it's one of the things that I learned when I took this job was very interesting to me, which was most humanitarian assistance around the world is spent in the same places year after year after year. These are places that are deeply vulnerable. We know when there are going to be droughts. We have the world's best system for tracking where there's likely to be a famine, called the Famine Early Warning System, FuseNet. And so we know with some precision what the future might look like on these types of issues. And traditionally, in my view, we haven't collectively done enough to deploy that kind of knowledge and insight ahead of time. We're starting to do that now, and we call that investments in resilience. And it can mean in a community that's going to suffer from a drought that is a pastoral community where people rely on livestock, we might go in and help build livestock markets and connect livestock buyers from outside of that community to that community so people get value for their animals before their animals essentially starve and die. And we've actually seen efforts like that save hundreds of thousands of people from having to go to refugee camps during droughts and instead sort of stay in their community and continue to survive until things get better. But there's a huge opportunity for those of you that are environmental scientists and sustainability students to come together and really expand some of these efforts. And today, the priority is just as much focused on national security as well. When you look at terrorist threat networks throughout the Sahel, they map perfectly with food and water insecurity. And so we're working hand in glove with the United States military to map these efforts and understand what are the types of things we can do to ensure more stability and security over the long run.
Can you elaborate? I mean, is that a place where private industry can step in? Because there's a huge movement of sustainability amongst the largest companies in the world. So is that a place where development and industry can come together?
Absolutely. I'll give you 3 examples. We work with companies that vaccinate livestock, and in advance of a drought or time of poor rainfall, that can make a huge difference, as you know, in sustaining animal values through that time. There are technologies like the emerging drought-tolerant or water-efficient maize for Africa type technologies that I think can be very important in those types of settings. And we have a very innovative cohort of partnerships with insurance and reinsurance companies, with Swiss Re in particular, where they use satellite data to do what's called rainfall indexed weather insurance products for very small-scale pastoral communities, and we help them design the product and sell it in that community. They're not making money on the premiums here, but when there's a drought, families that would be wiped out now get a payment that allows them to sustain themselves through that period of time. And keep in mind, we're in an agricultural state here. Most modern agricultural systems have some degree of risk protection provided by either government or public-private partnership. And we can learn from our own experience and now use new actuarial science to bring those kinds of solutions to surprisingly broad communities.
Great. More questions? Yes, sir. Will, thanks.
I think you have two-handed.
Hi, Dr. Shah. I'm Matt Lyon. I'm a proud graduate of the Walton College of Business as well as the Clinton School when you spoke there earlier this year. My question is about economic sustainability and how you can incentivize companies to go into areas that might not seem economically sustainable, especially just beyond a CSR or corporate social responsibility sense.
Well, thank you, but I'm going to, I would just suggest that some of the best companies are looking to unlock value over 10, 20, 30 years as opposed to over 10 or 20 months. And when you take that longer term view, Africa has 65% of the world's unused arable land. The issue of sanitation and hygiene in India is a massive long-term business opportunity for companies like Unilever and Procter & Gamble that do that. Water access in very difficult to reach communities in Latin America and Africa are of priority to Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I think when you're looking for business opportunities, these communities and countries are growing at anywhere from 4 to 10%. 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in sub-Saharan Africa. You're not going to be able to tap that kind of growth as a business by just going in for a season when times are good. You have to have a 10-year strategy and a coherent investment plan and bring your managers from other countries, as Syngenta Corporation is doing with our partnership. And I think it's appropriate for us as development partners to help these companies see and realize those business opportunities, so long as realizing those business opportunities adds value to the effort to end extreme poverty. But I would debate a little bit the premise of the question that they can't be successful financially over the long term, not through a CSR lens, but through a bottom line lens.
Great questions. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Shah, thank you for being here. My name is Joanna Pollock, and I'm in the Environmental Dynamics PhD program. I've just started, and my focus is community resilience planning.
Oh, good.
I've been volunteering with a small NGO that's based in Benin, and I actually just came back from their conference on the East Coast last night where I gave a presentation on climate resilience in Africa. So I'm wondering, given what you've said today, it's really hopeful about eradicating extreme poverty in the next 15 to 20 years and that being possible. Where do you see the role of the NGO, for one? And then also one of the things that we talked about was corrupt governance, and especially in African countries. And how do we work around that, or how do we broach that whenever we're trying to do good community resilience planning?
Well, thank you. Those are great points. Look, I think to end extreme poverty, we have to embrace a few new realities. One is we have to work in more vulnerable settings where climate stress and extremist ideology and extreme poverty all are overlapping. And we just have to deal with that together and embrace that reality, because that's what the face of poverty reduction is going to look like, if not in the next 2 to 3 years, certainly beyond that time frame. Because frankly, we will have exhausted the opportunity to move people out of that level of human deprivation in countries that are relatively well governed with good policies and good connections to an international capital flows. Second, I think we have to just recognize that governance is a part of development. And we should be using our resources and our capabilities to push hard on countries to make the right decisions and do the right things. Afghanistan is a notable example here. You've had some real successes, but also some very real challenges. If Afghanistan is going to be successful 10 years from now, when there will not be a significant American or international military presence, that success has to be grounded in responsible local leadership. That means they have to collect more customs revenue and use it for a good purpose. They have to sustain the huge gains in educating children, 8 million kids in school compared to virtually none under the Taliban. Certainly no girls. Today, 3.5 million girls in school. The fastest reductions in maternal and child death anywhere on the planet, because now 67% of the population has basic access to healthcare services. It's not Switzerland, but we're seeing real progress on core development indicators. A leadership team there has to make the decision that they're going to sustain that by making real investments, collecting real local taxes, and doing that in a transparent way and fighting corruption. And that's why when we brought the international community together last summer in Tokyo to say, let's make a 4 or 5 year commitment to Afghanistan on the development side, we created something called the Tokyo Mutual Accountability Framework. And when we fail to see certain actions take hold, we condition and pull back our aid and assistance. And we all just have to be comfortable with that kind of relationship with the countries we hope to work with.
Guys, before we take any more questions, I know many of you have a class that starts in the next few minutes, so if you need to get up and leave, please do so. We'll let Dr. Shah have a drink. Yes, ma'am. Will, can you bring the microphone to her, please?
Hello, thank you again for coming. It's been a pleasure, for sure. My name's Alana Harrison. I'm actually an Energy Corps member with the Applied Sustainability Center. And I was very interested in hearing about your Power Africa program. And specifically, I was wondering if you could speak on the role of utility deregulation in the future of the program, as well as how much is being invested in renewables and other forms of energy versus traditional energy sources.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. In terms of renewables versus other sources, we're not supporting through this effort, dirty coal or technologies like that. But frankly, especially in the countries we're working, hydropower is a major potential source of energy, geothermal. So I'm not sure technically if that all counts as renewable, but it is relatively low environmental footprint for the energy that's generated. I also, as we work with countries, the range of deregulation, sometimes I wouldn't use that term, but clearly we need better run utilities that are more sustained, can charge appropriate prices, and recover cost. And that usually requires pretty bold and significant leadership from heads of state. So as part of defining which countries would be part of the Power Africa program, we've secured those commitments from 6 African countries to ensure that we're working in those places where leadership is committed to improve the way the sector is run in the country. And by the way, I just point out that you can be successful at this. We're seeing real successes in Nigeria right now where they're privatizing about 2,200 megawatts of energy, which will, after about 18 months, probably double in production capacity because of the private investment that's going in. In Karachi in Pakistan, which is not, of course, in Africa, but a difficult place to work by all accounts, we've seen a very successful transformation of the Karachi energy company that's enabled more private investment in that region. So, I mean, we live in a world today where foreign direct investment exceeds development assistance flows by about 13 to 1 or 12 to 1. And all of these different examples are examples of doing the right things to attract private investment that can help create and sustain the kind of progress we seek in different parts of the world.
Great. Questions? Yes, sir, all the way in the back.
Hello, lovely talk. Andy Pereira. I'm a faculty in the College of Agriculture. So you're talking about private-public partnerships. It's great when a company like, for example, Monsanto or Syngenta has got a product to sell, and of course they're there to make money. But many of the solutions really are not really money-making. So myself, I work with, let's say, drought tolerance in rice. Mm-hmm. Rice doesn't have hybrids, so you can't really sell the seed. But a product would be very valuable to the world, essentially all the grassroots. So how does one approach that on a national level to be able to help without going through a private sort of partnership?
Good. Well, that's a good point, and I think that you've identified why it's so important that we have very, very strong public research and development programs in some areas around the world. I was talking at the beginning about the university's history as a land-grant university, but the Morrill Act and the structured investment in American agricultural technology really did more to transform our economy in the 40 years at the end of that century than any other trend. I mean, this was, essentially pre-industrial revolution. The cars didn't arrive by then, and yet you were seeing big improvements in agricultural productivity growth, development of rural finance systems, people moving into urban settings, and real progress. And similarly, where we've seen this kind of huge progress in many parts of the world, Brazil, Mexico, India, the Philippines, Indonesia, it's been jump-started by large, structured, consistent, and well-executed investments in public research and development. So thank you for the work you do. For those of you in that body of work, please keep it up. And we continue to make direct investments in public research systems around the world. But we also know those systems can be more effective and efficient when partnering with the private sector. And and I think these private companies have a lot to gain, even if it's not immediate returns on a particular product, but the connectivity to scientists, the knowledge of regulatory systems, and the way the world views the technology they offer will all speak profoundly to their bottom line over the next 30 years.
Great, thanks. Yes, sir. Maggie Joe.
Hello, I'm Brandon Daniels, and I'm studying agricultural business. And my question comes from the fact that each solution is going to have to be unique to the certain culture of that area, right? And how are we developing solutions to address those different worldviews in different areas of the globe, and how and what have we done that has shown some improvement in that?
Well, I think, how many of you know the story of Norman Borlaug? Is that a well-known? Oh, good. Well, Dr. Borlaug was an agricultural scientist who, he's the only agricultural scientist to have won the Nobel Peace Prize, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Congressional Medal of Honor together. In fact, the list of people who've won that is like 5 people, and it's a pretty elite group, as you might imagine. But Dr. Borlaug's answer to that question would have been, he passed away a few years ago, it would have been that you can bring consistency and technological advances while also being respectful of local norms and customs and cultures. But that if you try to do everything for the first time in a particular place in a way that's disconnected from what we've learned in other parts of the world, progress will be too slow to really beat human hunger. And his, of course, big contribution to the world was creating dwarf wheat that was much, much, much more resilient and productive and helped spark the Green Revolution. And people know about the science he did to create that technology. What they don't know is, when people wouldn't let him bring his seeds into country, he'd put them in his pocket, fly to Pakistan, plant a plot, and then come back months later with a dignitary to force some local leader to see how great his new crop was. And for those of you that are in this field, be bold and aggressive, because you want to be able to both create breakthroughs, but also you can't force them on folks, but you do want to make sure that the usual systems don't prevent people from seeing what's possible. And we've been told, well, you can't replicate a green revolution in Africa. I think that's entirely true, but you also can create more advanced crops, and we're already seeing better fertilizers that are helping tens of millions of people improve their quality of life in Bangladesh and Nigeria and throughout Latin America. So there are some areas where big advances can have consistent application and lead to big advances for humankind. And you can also do it in a way that's respectful of local cultures without being restricted to only focusing on local solutions.
I think we have time for one more question, so yes, sir.
My name is Bannon. I'm a biology student, and I'd like to ask, outside of the U.S. aid, Are these African communities in need at risk for any capitalistic exploitation by private corporations?
That's a very good question, in part because the history of a lot of corporate engagement in many parts of the world where we now work is not always positive. And some companies that we all know and love have had a very spotty track record in bringing transparency and modern business practice to other parts of the world. I would argue that things have fundamentally changed if you look at just the scale and intensity of scrutiny and transparency on corporate investment and activity in these parts of the world. That's especially true of American companies, which are now, there are some very clear disclosure regulations where they can't bribe other officials, they can't do the kinds of things that have traditionally been defined as enabling the kind of exploitation you're describing. That's not as true of companies from every country. And one of the things when we were with President Obama in Africa, he would say at every stop, he's like, look, you have to make a choice and choose to work with countries that bring companies that will respect the rule of law, create business practices and norms that can sustain over time, and that conduct their business operations in a way that really does lift up all of your people, not just a few at the top. And and there are countries that have taken a different approach. But I'll just close with a reference back to the last slide I showed you. I think people get it. I think across the world, people want to still work with, on a preferential basis, American companies, American universities, American scientists, American innovators, American entrepreneurs. And I think there is, in almost all parts of the world, something special and profound when America leads with our moral values expressed through our science and technology, our innovation and our partnerships. And we have a lot to do to make sure that we have the political standing to continue to do that for the next few decades, because if we can manage that, we will in fact end extreme poverty in our lifetime. So thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Dr. Shah, please accept this honors medallion as a token of appreciation from our students, our faculty, and staff at the University of Arkansas.
Thank you.
And thank you for a truly enhancing experience for the education of our students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dean.
Good.